So every year in November, the No Nut November challenge almost unfailingly takes over the For You pages of people who are on self improvement. And whenever I look at it, I'm always like, it's quite wholesome. It's nice. All the guys are getting together to try and improve their lives, let's say. But this year, I did think to myself, and I've been thinking about this the last couple of years as well. I've never partaken in No Nut November. I just feel like, it's more of like a lifestyle thing, right? And the reason I also haven't taken part in it is what I'm going to ask in this video is like, okay, you complete No Nut November, which is, well done to you, like going 30 days if you can actually complete it. If you do complete it, it's a massive, massive achievement on your part. But then it's like, what happens after that? Because I'm trying to think, even for the people that do complete it, I'm sure most people that do complete it are always like, okay, what gets them through is that, oh, I just want to make it through No Nut November. And then when they do complete it, they're like, oh, I actually want to take this as far as I can. But because the reason they completed No Nut November was because, it's a challenge that everyone else is doing and there's like an end date, it's like you can force yourself through it with sheer willpower. But almost unfailingly, most of them end up just going back into it by the new year. And ideally, I guess whoever came up with this, it was obviously nice that it's alliteration, right? To No Nut November, but also if someone was crafting it, it's not a bad time to start in November because you make it through November and you're like, okay, cool, I've completed No Nut November, and then in December, what gets you through is the new year's coming up, right? If I can make it through to the new year, I've got 2 months under my belt, and then New Year comes, and then it's like, oh, like I want to change myself and everything, and hopefully it goes very far. But usually it doesn't. And this is what I'm always talking about when people ask me, like, oh, how do you quit porn and all that stuff? And it's like, you don't quit it by doing No Nut November, that's for sure. Because the mentality it takes to get you in there is simply just, I'm going to get myself through this. I want to use an example that's a little bit left field, but it's like studying, for example, right? If what gets you through studying is like, oh, it's exams, right? And I'm going to start studying, and then after that, I'm done. You're not going to be someone who's like a proper student, right? You're just doing it because you're being forced to, and you can force yourself to do a lot of things through sheer willpower, through deadlines. They're very effective tools to get yourself to complete goals, right? To achieve goals. But long term, it's not anything that's sustainable. And when it comes to studying, it works because you just want to get through the exams, and every exam period that comes eventually is going to end. With quitting corn and stuff, it's not it's not a good idea because you want to quit this ideally like forever. And the way you do that is by and this works not just for corn, by the way. It also works just for everything in general. You want to change your life and everything. You don't do it by some challenge, 75 hard, or it's the New Year's. I'm going to create a New Year's resolution. It's No Nut November. I'm going to go through No Nut November and I'm going to complete it with the boys. You don't make like radical change through that, but rather you make it through radical transformation of your identity, right? Either your identity or just something fundamental changes in your life. And I've spoken about this countless times on my channel. I always look back, and even for me, when I'm looking, I think right now I'm still looking for a reason to like radically change my identity. I look back to what caused me to get onto self improvement like properly for a consistent period. The first time it was in 2021, and I spoke to like a friend who I hadn't spoken to since the end of 2019. Since we finished high school, and I just realized that I'd wasted a year and my life hadn't changed, and I was scared that like, oh, like 10 years from now I don't want to be coming back to a high school reunion, and I realized that I've just not hit my potential. And just something like that, right? That experience, like speaking to myself, it really, speaking to him, it really like, it just did something inside of me. It really like hit me like right here, because it was like, damn, I really, really don't want that. I really don't want like 10, 15 years, later, you're coming back to the high school reunion, and you're like, oh, I had all these plans after high school and I didn't achieve them because for whatever reason, I just let life pass me by. I'm like, I do not want that feeling. And that was enough. That was enough to create like enough of a radical transformation inside of me to actually like be consistent for over a year on like self improvement and radically make changes in my life. And it's similar, not just corn, as I said, not just corn, but also just changing your life in general. You need to find some just a radical transformation, right? Another good example I can give you is like someone who, they find God, right? They become Christian, and all of a sudden, they're not alcoholic anymore. They don't do all of the the degenerate activities they used to do before. Like they just radically transformed, right? Like alcohol is very addictive. Rehab has been shown to be like it's effective when you're in there, but the moment you leave the environment, it's very ineffective for drugs and all kinds of things. I think it was Jordan Peterson who said it. He was like, the out of all the techniques and programs that people have been put on to quit, like addictions and stuff, there's nothing that has been as uh effective as radical religious transformation. And it's just something like that, right? And it makes sense, right? The reason that is so effective is because you've completely changed your identity. You've got something in you that's causing you to be like, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to go back to that life. And it's just quite similar to changing your life and also quitting corn and stuff, right? You're not going to do it from doing a No Nut November challenge. It's cool, it's fun. Like I said, it's positive. But what, you're going to do that for 1 month if you're able to do it, because it is really difficult to do it for a month. And if you're able to do it for a month, it's not a knock to you at all. Like, that is fantastic. It's a wonderful achievement. But what are you doing for the other 11 months, right? Are you just going to go back to it, or you're kind of just hoping? And I'm telling you now, like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for most people, that even if you do complete No Nut November, you're probably back to it within a couple of months. If we're being conservative, I'd say you're back to it within a couple of weeks, to be honest. Uh, because the mentality just isn't changing. What you've done is, like I was saying, like, you're a drug addict, you're sent to rehab for a month, 2 months, and you're weaned off the drugs, right? And it's worked. Like, you've completely been weaned off the addiction. Then you go back to your old life, and you're back in it, right? And actually, quite interesting, just to drive the point home, the inverse of this happens, right? To people who were like in, I've heard stories of people that are like in, well, I think the studies they've done of people that are in like, they're serving in the army, and they go to like, a different country and at a different like army base or whatever, and they get addicted to drugs, right? And they have these problems, but then the moment they leave and they go back home, they don't have that addiction anymore. Like, they've done this research on like heroin, bro. Like, heroin is like very addictive, the most addictive of drugs. They'll get onto them when they're at the army base or whatever, and then they get back home, and they're back to their old life. They're not addicted at all, right? And another example I can give, since we're speaking about armies, about the military and everything. People who go to the military, they get disciplined and everything, and they have like just such fantastic discipline. They completely change themselves and everything. The moment they leave and they go back home, they're back to their old habits, right? They fall out of shape. They're not disciplined anymore. They lose direction in their life, and it falls apart. And it's just like the environment thing. I don't know how I got here, but basically my message in this video is like, stop using No Nut November as like something to like, as a quick fix, right? Be like, oh, I'm gonna quick fix my corn addiction. Like, you need to find something like really deep. And this is something I always say about quitting corn in general. It's not just about actually, don't even focus on it at all. That's what I always say. Don't focus on it at all. It's simply a symptom. It's not the problem in your life. The problem in your life is you have no direction. Because I always say this, similar to like drugs, and drugs, it's a little bit different. But I'd like to think that like someone who's happy, who's got a good like social life, they've got the close friends that they need, like really close friends they can trust, right? They've got the good like wife, they've got family, and they've got a good purpose in their life, right? The job they're doing, they love it. They've got purpose. They've got direction in their life, right? They've got all the pillars they need in their life to be happy. They're probably not going to be addicted to drugs, right? And similar thing to porn. Like, they're probably not going to be addicted to porn at all, because they've got everything else in order. Like, if you had everything in your life in order, would you be going to corn? Like, probably not. If you do have everything in order and you do still go back to corn, then you've got a problem. But for the most part, no, right? And that's just the message I want to give in this video, right? Don't stop using No Nut November as like a quick fix. Okay, but yeah, make sure you subscribe to join the Self Improvement Brotherhood, and until next time, I'll see you boys.